All right, so you want to dive into something kind of wild. Let's talk about what Inside Out 2 would look like set in the Warhammer 40K universe.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, we're talking about Riley's teenage angst.
Yeah.
But with a 40K twist.
Well, I think what's really fascinating about that idea is that you're taking these very relatable emotional struggles and putting them into a setting where survival is often measured in like milliseconds, you know?
Yeah.
It really makes you rethink the whole nature of emotions when you're dealing with like literal demons trying to rip your soul apart.
Yeah, exactly. Forget moving to a new city and starting a new school.
Right.
Like in the original Inside Out.
Yeah.
In this version, 13-year-old Riley isn't heading to San Francisco.
Nope.
She's being conscripted into the Adeptus Mechanicus Scholastica on Terra, basically Earth,
Oh, wow.
in the 41st millennium.
Okay.
And let me tell you, Terra makes San Francisco look like a walk in the park.
The Adeptus Mechanicus, for those who might not know.
Yeah.
They're basically the tech priests of Mars, completely obsessed with machines and preserving ancient knowledge. They rule Terra with an iron fist.
Yeah.
Their every action dictated by, like, ritual and dogma.
Oh, wow.
So instead of navigating the social hierarchies of middle school, Riley is now in this world where conformity and obedience are, like, the most important things.
Right, so we've got this super intense setting.
Yeah.
But what about Riley's emotions? How do joy, sadness, anger even work in a world like that?
That's where it gets really, really interesting because instead of being these, you know, cute little characters running around headquarters, Riley's emotions are now, get this, AI protocols
What?
called emotional servitors.
Oh, okay.
So they're essentially programs designed to manage her psychological responses.
Okay.
But, and this is the important part, they shield her mind from the corrupting influence of the warp.
The warp. Maybe we should explain that a bit.
Oh, you're right.
For listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with 40K.
Good point. The warp. Think of it as another dimension.
Okay.
This chaotic sea of psychic energy.
Yeah.
Reflecting all the emotions and thoughts of the material universe. It's incredibly powerful, but also incredibly dangerous.
I see.
Like, think of it as the ultimate cosmic ocean of feels, but with the potential to drive you completely insane.
So Riley's emotional servitors are like her personal bodyguards
Exactly.
against this psychic maelstrom.
Pretty much.
It's pretty intense for a 13-year-old.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just like in the original movie, puberty throws a wrench in the works.
Yeah, yeah.
But instead of a puberty alarm,
Right.
Riley's system gets hit with the maturation protocol.
Okay.
This upgrade, well, throws her emotional control systems into chaos.
Oh, no.
And a whole new set of servitors emerge.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting.
Interesting might not be the right word.
Oh.
Terrifying might be more accurate.
Okay.
Imagine anxiety, envy, embarrassment, even ennui,
Wow.
all vying for control of Riley's psyche.
So it's like all the worst parts of being a teenager.
Oh, it's definitely amplified in the 40K universe. But here's the thing, these aren't just random emotions, they reflect the dominant anxieties of the Imperium itself.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So you're saying that Riley's internal struggles are like a microcosm
Exactly.
of the Imperium's own existential crisis.
Well, you got it.
That's actually pretty brilliant.
It's what makes this reimagining so powerful.
Yeah.
On the surface, it's just Inside Out with, you know, bolters and power armor.
Right.
But when you look deeper, you see these amazing parallels between individual development and societal pressures.
So how does this all play out? We've got these new servitors, this
Yeah.
super anxiety-ridden setting. What happens to Riley?
Well, anxiety, being the dominant protocol, becomes obsessed with survival in this cutthroat environment.
Okay.
So instead of worrying about making friends, Riley is now fixated on proving her worth to the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Oh, wow.
And this leads her down a pretty dark path, pushing her to even betray those closest to her.
That's heartbreaking.
It is.
I mean, in the original Inside Out, Joy was all about protecting Riley from negative experiences.
Right.
But in this 40K version, it seems like Joy has a much, much tougher job.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Joy now has to figure out how to help Riley navigate a world where fear and anxiety aren't just unavoidable.
Right.
They're often necessary for survival.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate balancing act, especially with the constant threat of the warp looming over everything.
Okay, this is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So we've got Riley battling her inner demons, literally and figuratively. But what about external pressures? Isn't there some, like, super strict authority figure making things even more difficult?
Oh, absolutely. Forget Coach Roberts.
Okay.
We now have a Magos instructor overseeing Riley's training.
Boy, boy.
This is someone with the power to decide Riley's entire future within the Imperium.
That's a lot of pressure.
A future that often depends on complete obedience and conformity.
So instead of dealing with, like, the awkwardness of puberty, Riley's also facing the possibility of total societal rejection.
Pretty much.
It's like her entire sense of self-worth is on the line.
Exactly. And remember, this is the Adeptus Mechanicus we're talking about.
Right.
People who view emotions as weaknesses, as flaws in the machine.
Yeah.
So Riley's struggle to control her emotions isn't just a personal challenge, it's a direct threat to her survival in this system.
Wow, this reimagining is getting darker by the minute.
It's the grim, dark future after all.
True, but I gotta admit, I'm hooked.
Good.
What happens next? Does Riley even survive this pressure cooker of a childhood?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, come on, you're killing me with the suspense. I guess we'll have to wait for part 2 to find out what happens next.
You know how we were talking about Riley's emotional servitors and how they reflect the anxieties of the Imperium?
Yeah.
Well, it gets even deeper than that.
Okay.
See, the Imperium, for all its talk about unity and strength, is actually terrified of psychers.
Really? Why is that? I mean, wouldn't psychers be a huge advantage?
You think so, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yep.
Psychic power in 40K, it's all linked to the warp.
Right.
And the more powerful a psyker gets, the more vulnerable they become to the influence of chaos.
Ah, so it's like a double-edged sword.
Exactly. The Imperium's always walking this tightrope, trying to harness the power of psychers while being absolutely terrified of what they could become.
So that tension is mirrored in Riley, right?
Oh, absolutely.
With her own struggles.
Yeah, as her powers grow, so does her anxiety, her fear of losing control.
And becoming a danger to herself and everyone else.
Exactly.
Like a vicious cycle.
It really is.
You know what? It makes me wonder if Riley's anxiety is actually a natural reaction to the warp.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like her subconscious is picking up on this cosmic danger
I see.
that her conscious mind can't even grasp.
It's like, you know those old horror movies?
Yeah.
Where the animals start acting weird
Yeah.
right before the real terror begins.
Right, exactly like that.
Yeah, and just like in those movies, no one believes the warnings until it's too late.
Oh man, that's creepy.
It is.
So back to Riley
Okay.
and her struggles.
Yes.
We left off with her facing that harsh Magos instructor.
Right.
What's that kind of mentorship like in the 40K universe?
Well, let's just say that education in the Imperium,
Okay.
it's not about nurturing individuality. It's more like forging conformity.
Oh, wow.
And the Magos instructor,
Yeah.
they embody that philosophy to the extreme.
Like to the max.
They demand absolute obedience.
I see.
And any deviation from the norm,
Yeah.
that's potential heresy.
So I'm guessing there aren't a lot of hugs and pep talks?
Not really. Think more like harsh discipline,
Oh.
rote memorization,
Yeah.
and the constant threat of punishment.
For like the smallest mistake.
Oh yeah, even the tiniest slip-up.
Wow, that's intense.
There are stories in 40K lore about tech priests. Yeah.
Who subject their students to horrifying experiments. All in the name of progress.
That's messed up.
It's a dark universe.
So Riley's facing this incredibly oppressive system, both internally
Yes.
and externally.
It's no wonder she's on the verge of a meltdown.
Remember in the original Inside Out,
Yeah.
her meltdown was triggered by moving and trying to fit in.
Right. The stress of a new school.
But here, the
Yeah.
stakes are way higher.
It's not just about fitting in anymore.
No.
It's about survival.
Wow.
Proving your worth to a system that sees you as both a weapon and a threat.
And that meltdown, it's not just a personal crisis.
Nope.
It's like a breach in the Imperium's defenses.
Think of it as a beacon.
For what?
For demons. For all sorts of nasty things lurking in the warp.
So her anxiety is actually putting her in real danger.
Exactly. And here's where things diverge from the original Inside Out.
Okay.
In the film, Joy could just suppress sadness and regain control.
Yeah.
But in the 40K universe, that wouldn't work. You're saying that kind of suppression wouldn't fly.
It might work for a bit, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Ooh,
The problem isn't sadness or anger or even anxiety.
Then what is it?
It's the warp itself.
Oh, right.
It's this constant pressure on Riley's mind.
So Joy can't just, like, ignore those negative emotions.
I know.
She has to find a way to make them work for Riley.
Exactly. It's a much more complex challenge,
Yeah.
especially in a place where emotions are seen as weaknesses.
It's like trying to build a house out of dynamite.
That's a good analogy.
So Joy has to make peace with these new servitors. But what about Riley herself?
What about her?
Does she just sit back and let it all happen?
This is where this reimagining really gets into the themes of agency and resistance.
Okay.
Remember, Riley's a 13-year-old girl
Yeah.
who's been ripped from everything she knows
Right.
and thrown into this terrifying system.
That-
She's lost control of her emotions.
Mhm.
She's being manipulated by her servitors. And everyone around her sees her as a potential threat.
So she's trapped.
Yes. But even in the darkest nightmare, there's a glimmer of hope.
What's that?
Riley's own resilience, her refusal to give in to the darkness.
So she's not just going to take it lying down.
Absolutely not. In fact, I think Riley's journey here becomes a story about finding your voice.
Even when you're surrounded by forces trying to silence you.
Exactly.
I'm sensing a turning point here.
You're right, too.
What happens?
Remember how Riley hacked the Magos instructor's data slate?
Yeah, and found out she was deemed unsuitable for recruitment.
That was a harsh blow.
It felt like all her effort was for nothing.
In the original film, that kind of rejection might have broken her.
Right.
But in the 40K universe, things are different.
How so?
Imagine that instead of crushing her, this rejection ignites something within Riley.
Okay.
It makes her question everything.
Everything.
Everything she's been told about the Imperium,
Okay.
about her place in it, about the very nature of her own emotions.
So it's like this rejection.
Yes.
It becomes a catalyst for her to break free
You got it.
from the system's control.
And that's when things get really interesting.
Go on.
Because when Riley starts to question the Imperium,
Yeah.
she starts to question the very foundations of its power.
Whoa.
She sees the cracks in the facade,
Okay.
the hypocrisy, the fear at its heart.
I am officially on the edge of my seat.
Good.
Where does this rebellion lead her?
That's a question we'll explore in part 3.
Oh, come
But
on.
I'll leave you with this thought.
Okay.
If Riley's journey mirrors the Imperium's own struggles,
Yeah.
what does that say about the Imperium's chances of survival? Can a system built on fear and repression truly stand against chaos?
That's a chilling thought.
It is.
I can't wait for part 3 to see where Riley's rebellion goes
Me too.
and what it means for the Imperium itself. Okay, so we're back and ready to finish this wild ride.
Yeah, things are about to get even more interesting for Riley.
You know what's really fascinating about this whole 40K reimagining of Inside Out 2?
What's that?
It makes you think about emotions in a totally different way.
Yeah, in a universe where the line between reality and nightmare is so blurred.
Exactly. It's not just about how Riley adapts to the Imperium,
Right.
but how the Imperium might have to adapt to someone like her.
Exactly, because remember, the Imperium,
Yeah.
this giant ancient empire, it's built on this idea of absolute control.
Right.
Suppressing individuality, suppressing emotion, all for the sake of order.
But we've seen how that can backfire.
Oh, yeah, especially with psychers.
Like, trying to control them just makes them more susceptible to chaos.
It's a self-defeating cycle.
So what happens when someone like Riley comes along? One
Yeah.
who challenges those deeply ingrained beliefs.
Well, imagine this.
Okay.
Riley, rejected by the Adeptus Mechanicus, she realizes that what they saw as a weakness, her emotional complexity, might actually be her greatest strength.
So instead of trying to fit into this rigid system,
Yeah.
she embraces her individuality
Exactly.
and becomes this powerful force.
Right. And this could go in so many directions.
Like what?
Maybe she finds others like her,
Okay.
other rejected psychers.
Who couldn't conform.
Yeah, ostracized by the Imperium.
And they band together.
Maybe. Or maybe she catches the eye of a rogue traitor.
Oh, wow.
Or an inquisitor.
Someone who sees her potential.
Exactly. They recognize her unique abilities.
Instead of another cog in the machine,
Yeah.
she's a wild card,
A disruptor.
shaking things up.
And that could have huge implications for the Imperium.
How so?
Imagine a psyker who can not only wield the power of the warp,
Yeah,
but channel it through human emotion.
that's a lot of power.
Imagine someone who can inspire hope or sow discord among enemies.
Even bend reality to her will.
It's a possibility.
That's incredible, but also kind of terrifying, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If the Imperium is afraid of psychers who suppress their emotions?
Yeah. They'd be terrified of someone like Riley who embraces them.
So she's both a symbol of hope and a potential threat.
Exactly, a walking paradox.
She represents the Imperium's potential to evolve,
Yes, to embrace new ways of understanding psychic power.
but also a challenge to its core beliefs.
The beliefs that have held it together for millennia.
So what happens? Does she become a hero? Or does she bring about the Imperium's downfall?
That's the question that stays with you
Yeah.
long after we're done here.
It really makes you think.
It does. But here's one final thought.
Okay.
What if Riley's journey isn't about picking a side?
What do you mean?
What if it's about transcending the whole idea of order versus chaos?
Oh, interesting.
What if she represents a third path?
Okay.
One that embraces the full spectrum of human experience.
The light and the darkness.
The order and the chaos.
It's like the Imperium's obsession with control is its weakness.
Maybe true strength comes from accepting complexity.
Wow, this has been a wild ride.
It has.
We started with a simple question,
About Inside Out 2 in the 40K universe.
and we ended up exploring some really deep stuff.
About power, control, and human emotion in the face of cosmic horror.
It's amazing how even the grimmest settings can make you think about the human experience.
And who knows, maybe Riley's story will make people rethink their own emotions.
To see them not as weaknesses, but as sources of strength.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all of this.
And next time.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the 41st millennium.